Hello there. Welcome to the Keith Noble Show, brought to you by Auto Chicks and D Noble's Financial Network. So, I often say sometimes societies just collectively go insane. Yeah, there's an obtuseness to our society now that's can't be fathomed. Things are obviously true, or easily known to be true, easily verifiable, easily and readily known, indisputable. People ignore, and they ignore because it is ideologically inconvenient, and it's inconvenient to their fantasies. Some years ago, Daniel Patrick Moynihan said, we're approaching a fantasized state in this country. People will say anything. They want to be true. Politicians will say anything, no matter how false it is, no matter how far away from reality it is. So let me give you some examples of how we've entered this state of fantasy. We have this enormous debt crisis. Okay, the federal government is pushing close to $30 trillion now in federal debt. Deficit for this just recently ended fiscal year is $3.1 trillion. Next year, the deficit is projected to be $3.5 trillion. It wasn't that long ago. It really wasn't that the entire budget was not $3 trillion, let alone the deficit. We have not only federal government owes close to $30 trillion now. We have unfunded obligations on behalf of the federal government. This is Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid, VA, pensions, all those sorts of things. So according to the Department of Treasury, over the next 30 years, the unfunded obligations total $122 trillion. Now, a lot of people think that's low, and maybe low by half, and maybe actually as much as double that. But so somewhere north of $122 trillion. But even if we go with the Treasury Department's own number of $122 trillion over the next 30 years, that's $4 trillion a year the federal government has to come up with and spend that they never budgeted for. They didn't save the money for. They just made promises for the future. Now those promises are coming due. They have to come up with the cash. They have to come up with the money to do it. So we have corporate debt that's off the charts. And we have a monetary system controlled by the Federal Reserve that is wedded to ZIRP, wedded to zero interest rate policy, and wedded to continually injecting further liquidity. The balance sheet for the Federal Reserve is now north of $7 trillion. So, to give you an idea, it was less than a year ago. It was just a tad over $4 trillion. That's just what we've done in a year. It's mind-boggling. And people think, well, we can do this forever. Well, no, we can't do it forever. But what happens if we just stop? We can't probably do that either. And here's why. Because as I've been talking about, rehypothecation, collateralization, all this debt is collateralized and rehypothecated. If debt goes bad, it dominoes through the whole economy and things start going very, very badly, very, very quickly. So we're in this bind. And we are intentionally, as a people, intentionally ignoring it, intentionally pretending it doesn't exist. And not only that, we have people proposing policies and ideas about what government should do that as though this doesn't exist. We have people literally saying, well, the government can make all the money, can create all the money it wants, so it's all okay. Did we just skip over the last 5,000 years of history? Is that what we just did? No. So all this debt sucks so much out of the economy just to service the debt. This is what people don't get. Even in zero interest rate policies, even at negative interest rate policies, you still have to service the debt. You still have to make those payments. Now, about 80% of federal debt's in 2-year notes. That means next year, the federal government's going to have to borrow about $11 trillion. They have to find people to lend them $11 trillion. Where are we going to keep finding these people to lend? And as far as the people go, well, we can just create all the money we want. generally they have no idea how money is created. Federal Reserve, Department of Treasury assures liquidity and reserves to banks. Banks create additional money. And they create additional money by the rehypothecation of those reserves in terms of lending, in terms of loans. So every new dollar created comes into the system as a credit and a debt. So you can only create new money as long as there are people willing to continue to borrow. Well, it doesn't take a rocket science to know there's an end to the amount that people are willing to borrow, and there's an end to the amount people are willing to lend. Well, we're pretending these things aren't true. They are true. They have always been historically true. They have always been mathematically true. And they have always been economically true. We have people going, well, it's different this time. It's not. It won't be. Those are just the most famous last words in history. It's different this time. So, yes, we have gone insane. We've gone insane with... I had quite a few people, progressives yesterday, tell me they don't use force, coercion, compulsion, and violence to get their way. That's insane. Of course you do. It's laws, taxes, fees, regulations, licensing. All those things are force, violence, coercion, compulsion. And you know why? Because you have to obey them. Or they will send men with guns to compel you to obey them, and if you still don't obey, those men with guns will visit violence upon you. Of course, it's force, compulsion, coercion, and violence. That's what progressivism is premised on. It's insane to argue otherwise. I mean, it's truly obtuse, and I'm sure these people actually really believe what they're saying. But that just demonstrates the level of insanity we have. I did a video a few days ago. Hopefully you saw it. Look it up, how abhorrent our education system is. And somebody told me I was talking over people's heads. Well, that kind of proves my point, doesn't it? I mean, it proves my point. It's just scary where society has gone. The obtuseness, the insanity of it all. That we, as Moynihan forecast years ago, we're no longer dealing in reality in any way, shape, or form. We're just dealing in whatever our favorite fantasies are and premising policies on fantasies and good intentions. It has nothing to do with reality. And we think this all ends well. It will not. What it ends in, I firmly believe, is liberty. And it's going to be painful and probably bloody between here and there. But it will end in liberty because liberty is the only system that's actually sustainable. It's the only system not premised on violence, and it's the only system not premised on fraud. Everything else is premised on violence and fraud other than liberty. Other than a system where you recognize everyone is created equal with the same natural rights. You do not use force, violence, compulsion, and coercion to make people do what you want. Understand that. That's why it's sustainable. That is why. Because it's not dependent on accounting fraud to keep government going. It's not dependent on debt pyramid schemes to keep things going. It's honest. That's honest. Now, maybe somebody doesn't like you and maybe you don't like somebody else. Oh well, it's way better than fraud and deception and force and violence. Infinitely better. And we're going to learn that lesson the hard way. But I am confident we will return to liberty. That's why I do this. I am confident we will return to liberty. So thank you for tuning in. Talk to you soon. Keep fighting the good fight for liberty. Look up Auto Chicks and the Nobles Financial Network on Facebook. Look up my book on Amazon, Our Dogs Did Not Bark, a Politically Incorrect Dystopian Tale, and keep fighting the good fight for freedom.